Welcome everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Use the Platform When Presenting. Peter Dew's my name, and I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion, as many of you know, is to help people have the courage, the confidence and the skills to stand up and speak and share your knowledge, your wisdom, your messages with your communities, with the people, your clients, those that need to hear what you've got to say. I never want to have anyone have something to say and not be able to share it because of fear or nerves or lack of structure or lack of target in their presentation. So we've just got underway. Those of you who are just joining us, welcome Sharon. How to use the platform. Those of you who've done webinars before, please take notes, ask questions as we go, and think of your previous presentations and upcoming presentations. And Sharon, from memory, you may have a presentation that you've volunteered to present at a conference, if my recollection serves me. So what might you do? And please, as you move forward with new skills, take little steps. So there might be some advanced stuff I show you. If you're not ready for it, weave it in later on. So one step at a time. Platform mechanics, using the platform is part of your non-verbal communication. We've all seen this diagram before at some stage. If we look at our words and you're preparing for a conference and you prepare, rewrite, rescript, but you're only affecting 10% of your ability to influence. Message is still important, but the vast majority, over half, is in your non-verbal communication. And this is kind of your voice, your pause, your lack of filler words, your sincerity, the passion that comes through. So platform is part of your body language, part of your gestures, part of your non-verbal communication. So really important that we know how to enhance our presentation using the platform. So the call to action today is get out from behind the lectern and make use of the platform, make use of the stage, make use of the space. I don't mind what you call it, but get out from behind the lectern. The lectern happens to be one of the most weakest positions from an influential and an adult learning perspective. I'm going to cover why come out from behind the lectern, how to stand, posture and breathing, some things around anchoring messages, decontamination, and some advanced platform skills. So we'll cover all that in half an hour. Do ask questions as we go. And as I said in my earlier remarks, contact me after the webinar if you have additional questions. Come out from behind the lectern. This gentleman is stuck behind the lectern. He's doing a thing we call lectern lean. Leaning on the lectern, he's not quite got white knuckle fever where you grab hold of the lectern for dear life and your knuckles turn white, but he is definitely leaning on the lectern, affecting his breathing and putting a barrier between himself and his audience. So coming out from the lectern helps you create stronger positions. So if we look at the strengths of our position on the stage, the strongest position on a platform is in the middle of the stage. So here is the strongest and here is the second most influential. This is neuro-linguistic programming. So I call this the corridor of influence. And where most lecterns are off to the left of the room. Some are over on the right, but most are on the left. So if you spend the majority of your time behind the lectern here, you are neglecting that corridor of influence. So at some stage, come out from behind the lectern, walk into the middle of the room and have just one-on-one adult conversations with the 150 people in the room. Move forward if you wish to nail some key points, to emphasize some key takeaways, and then move back. to the second position, and that's really effective use of the platform. I would not deliver my entire presentation from position number 1. It may be seen as a little bit in the audience's face, just a bit too close to their personal space. But coming forward momentarily to emphasize a point is great use of the platform. Then you can go back to position 2, and then you can deliver most of your content from position 2, and you can move over to position 4 to engage a different part of the audience, or maybe you've got a flip chart over here and you want to go over or a whiteboard, and you may want to write some information up on the flip chart. You've still got the lectern here. Maybe you've got your notes you need to check some advanced statistic. You can come back over here, quickly look down at your notes and say whatever that statistic is. Clearly, if you're going to use the platform, you need a lapel hands-free microphone or a Madonna singing type microphone, the higher quality microphones, or even a handheld microphone. If you have a microphone that is anchored in the podium or the lectern, you may not be able to leave. But generally, when I'm speaking at a convention, I make sure that I can have a hands-free microphone. Even if they give me one that I can hold and move around, I'm not good at using that microphone. I tend to drop it and my voice slowly fades away. So that's why we get out from behind the lectern, so we can use the corridor of influence. However, some people say, Peter asked me to get out from behind the lectern and use the platform, and what we get is the cat that walks from left to right, constantly pacing as they're walking. It's called cat on the hot tin roof. I saw Sir Bob Geldof speak a few years ago, and he paced back and forth for the entire 90 minutes. I cannot recall much of what he said, but gee, he must have used a lot of energy. Stand-up comedians often pace aimlessly back and forth. If you can use the platform for a reason, then that's so much more effective. Or if you're just getting out from behind the lectern to emphasize some points, stand still as opposed to doing that prowling. Your stance. So when you stand behind the lectern, you can do all sorts of things. You can do cross-legged dances, up and down on your toes, fidgeting. Nobody knows because you're hiding behind the lectern. So avoid what we call the fig leaf. The fig leaf is one of the passive stances. It means I'm shy, I don't want to be here, and it's not a credible, confident stance. So avoid the fig leaf. Avoid hands in pockets and that little shoulder shrug. I'm really nice. I'm really pleasant. Once again, this is a passive stance. Avoid having your legs too wide apart. As a general guide, it should be no wider than your shoulders. I see this stance, excuse my crooked drawings, I see this stance and even wider in the mining sector, where they plant their feet wide apart and then they go to have a nice discussion with you, but it's aggressive, closed stance, especially to female presenters, to female audiences. So if you're a male and you stand wide like that, it's seen as an aggressive stance. So please just don't do that. Avoid that. Also, arms crossed, closed stance. Now, as an audience member, I will often put my hands like that because it's very comfortable. But if you're the presenter and this is your predominant stance, then you're also seen as closed and maybe aggressive. Now, this is a valid gesture if you're indicating indignation. And you might be talking and your hands might be moving with beautiful gestures, and then your stance might go to this. So imagine how I felt when they said that to me. I felt quite offended and then moved to another stance or another gesture. So just watch your stance. Avoid hands behind back and avoid hands on your hip. So where should you stand, or how should you stand when you leave the platform? By your side or parallel, in line with your belly button, parallel to the floor. So this one is not doing fidgeting, not curling fingers, not clicking knuckles, but by my side, ready to gesture. Please understand, this is your resting position when you may be not gesturing. Of course, your hands are going to come to life and you're going to make gestures, but what do you do when you're not gesturing? And of course, the hands to the midriff, to the belly button, is a common stance that our weather presenters do after they've pointed to a synoptic chart or a cyclone forming off the northwest of West Australia, and they bring their hands back to their belly button. So this one is acceptable, whereas the fig leaf is passive, shy, I don't want to be here. These are neutral recommended resting positions. So when you get out from behind the lectern, make sure that's your predominant stance when you're not gesturing. Are there any questions on those stances? Have you been watching some of the politicians? One of the things I notice with politicians when they stand for the group photo, and I don't know where they get it from. So they stand for the group photo and you see them all standing side by side and with their hands down by their crutch in the fig leaf. If you want some scientific evidence behind this, then go to Amy Cuddy, AMYCUDDY. And Amy has done a beautiful TED talk around faking it until you become it. And part of it is the posing that you do before a presentation should be powerful and confident, not fig leaf, not passive. And that helps with your credibility and your confidence when you walk on platform if you've done some appropriate power posing as opposed to shy, passive posing before getting on stage. Also works before job interviews. Your posture, and this can be sitting or standing. Another gentleman's doing lectern lean in that first photo. The one at the top is leaning back against the chair. And imagine this is a job interview. So if you're sitting, it should be on the front 1/3 of the chair. So the gentleman with the guitar, he's sitting on the front edge of the chair. This is where musicians sit. This is your peak performance position. This is upright for breathing. When you lean back or when you slouch or when you touch furniture, your breathing just changes a little bit. So once again, if you are going to move behind the lectern, then your hands should be by your side or by your belly button, ready to gesture, and you've got to gesture high now because all your gestures are below the lectern or you are hidden by the lectern, depending on the height of the lectern. So you need to gesture above the lectern, otherwise your gestures don't mean anything. So your posture when you come out, you need to stand upright, try not to lean on anything, and of course keep your breathing going. One thing you can use for the lectern is time series anchoring. And if this is the audience here, then to my right hand side, the audience's left hand side. So this is the audience's left and this is the audience's right. This is the past, this is the present, this is the future. So this is me here and I'm presenting to you. Good morning everyone. Thank you for coming to this cystic fibrosis seminar. As many of you know, in the past, cystic fibrosis was literally a death penalty. If our young teenagers with cystic fibrosis weren't lucky enough to get a transplant, they died in their late teens, early 20s, unless they were really lucky. And this is only 10 or 15 years ago. Cystic fibrosis was a really bad condition. At the moment, we've seen some really good advances with antibiotic therapy, with vitamin E, with physiotherapy, and our cystic fibrosis kids are living to their late 40s, early 50s without the need for transplantation. In fact, I've got a friend who is 53 and still quite fit and quite healthy, still with impaired lung function, but living with his cystic fibrosis. In the future, what we'd like to see is a world where cystic fibrosis is no longer a problem, no longer a concern. A little bit like people with asthma now and people with diabetes, they go on to live normal, healthy lives with their chronic condition. I'm going to move back to the middle. However, at the moment, we've got a long way to go. So we still need to do some research and develop new drugs to help people reach that wonderful goal of cystic fibrosis just being a normal condition. Past, present, future. When I started this afternoon, I asked you to ask questions as we go. I've paused once for questions, and when I finish, if you've got any further questions after the webinar, please feel to email me those questions. This morning, at the moment, this afternoon, it's just a time series. If you want to remember, it's the way that your audience reads across the page, which is back to front for you. So I want you to understand that my past is over here as a presenter, my present remains the same, and my future is over here. So when you speak, you need to flip it for the audience. It's another neuro-linguistic programming tool, NLP, that just helps people improve their memory, past, present, future. Decontamination. Using the platform to decontaminate. So decontamination is when you take something to the side. Remember that this is the position of excellence. And this is our corridor of influence. This is the strongest position on the floor. If you're dealing with tough stuff, I wouldn't deal with it here. I want to keep this clean, to nail my messages, to be influential. So if you ask me a difficult question, I'm going to move back and off to one side and say, look, I don't agree with you. I think you've misinterpreted what I've said, but it could be that you and I just have to agree to disagree. Right, I'm going to move back here. The main thing I want you to walk away with is, so I've kept this clean, and that's called decontamination. Let's say you're trialing a new opening. Let's say you're trialing humor, a joke. You're going to start your presentation with a joke. If you're like me, or maybe you're not like me, but like me, I am not very funny, I'm not good at humor, and in fact I probably wouldn't start a presentation with a joke, but let's say I've decided to. What I would recommend is move to the side. It's not negative, so I don't need to go back. Move to the side and tell my joke. After my opening, if nobody laughs, I can then move back to the middle, which I've kept clean, and say, well, I'm not quite sure what that person was talking about, and look over to where I was standing for the joke. But what I'm here today to talk to you about is the future of treatment to help our children with cystic fibrosis. So if you've got a new opening, you can decontaminate. It's a little bit like the trash can on your Windows desktop. Take the tough stuff off to the side, keep the middle nice and clean. So that's decontamination. Quite an advanced platform mechanic, just to let you know. All right. Moving off to the side to decontaminate. When's it good for use? Good cop, bad cop? You want to be good in the middle. You want to be disruptive. You want to be controversial. It's good for trying something new, such as starting with a new opening with humour, taking difficult questions, contentious questions to the side, and that's the concept of using the platform to decontaminate. I'm going to give you a concept of connecting and separating points. Sometimes when you finish with one point, you want to separate it and start with another aspect of your talk. Other times you are connecting the points, they're related. So when you're walking and talking from one point in the platform to another point in the platform, you are connecting the content. So as I said in the past, cystic fibrosis was literally a death penalty, to our young teenagers born with a cystic fibrosis condition. But fortunately at the moment we've had some really good advances in antibiotic therapy and also in vitamin E and physiotherapy, and what we've got now is a world where our cystic fibrosis kids are living to their late 40s, early 50s. Did you notice how I kept talking as I moved across the platform? And what we'd like to see in the future is a world where there's a world where people with cystic fibrosis live normal, healthy lives without a condition or without dying from cystic fibrosis, without needing a lung transplant. Unfortunately, that world is still 10 to 15 years off, and we need a lot of medical research, a lot of antibiotic trials, a lot of gene therapies before we get to that. Did you notice how I didn't talk when I moved back to the present? So I separated that particular point when I was coming back to the call for action for more funding, more research, because that reality is still 10 to 15 years away. So what you do is you walk and talk is connecting the group, the points. So you've spatially anchored one point to the right, one point in the middle, third point to the left. And if you're talking as you move between them, you're kind of connecting sequentially those points. Now you want to summarize. You move back to another point, back to the middle, silence as you walk. You can even put eyes down to the floor. That indicates a separation. Any questions on connection and separation? I'd be interested to know. Yeah, fancy, a little bit complex, yeah, but people do it all the time. Everyone's good? Thank you. So responding to questions, this is the model. Move away from the person who's asking the question. Move to the other side of the room, that is. Receive the question and use your peripheral vision to observe the rest of the audience. Deliver the response to everyone in the room with equal eye contact, and then come back and thank. Don't move back, but thank the person for the question. It seems counterintuitive. So this is what it looks like. This is how it looks like. This person here asked me a question. I'm going to move over here and say an eye contact there. Yes, what is your question? And then my peripheral vision is going to look at all of those people. Then I'm going to answer the question, making eye contact with everyone equally, and then I'm going to say thank you for your question with eye contact at that person. And then this person now asks me a question. And I'm going to move over to here and say, yes, you have a question, as I look back at that person. And my peripheral vision is going to scan the rest of the room. as I take the question from that individual. It seems counterintuitive, but the reason is this. If this person's asking a question and everyone else in the room shakes their head from side to side or rolls their eyes, I need to know that the question you've asked is inappropriate and the rest of the room is saying, look, Peter, please don't answer this question. This is way out of scope. And what I can say to you is, because I want to be respectful, what I can say to this person is, thank you for your question. It's a little bit out of scope of what I want to talk about. Can we have a chat about that at morning tea break? Can we have a little bit of chatter of that after? So the peripheral vision is how you gauge the rest of the room. If I move over here and this person asks a question and I don't want to answer it because I think it's stupid and everyone in the room nods their head, then now if I shut that person down, I make the mistake and I will lose everyone in the room. So that's why it's important to move to the opposite end. What people do, unfortunately, is this person asks a question, the speaker moves here, yes, Peter, you've got a question, and my back and my peripheral vision does not see what's happening here. So the shaking of heads, the rolling of eyes, the gasps of surprise when the question's answered are all lost, and I risk losing the group as I deal with an inappropriate question or I deal with one person's needs. Approachable, palms up. So this is out from the platform, so you've now got an opportunity to say, so I'm really pleased to be here. I'd really like to help you, but you need to be credible, palms down. So what I'm saying is, if you don't get out from the platform, you're really neglecting that corridor of influence. So my call from action today, get out from behind the lectern, make use of the platform. Use the platform for purpose. And if you've got flip charts and whiteboards, they can be really useful as well. I sometimes have two flip charts. One flip chart is pre-written, so I can reveal models as my presentation goes on. The other flip chart can be where I deal with tough stuff or where I can park questions, the parking lot. That's a really good point. I'll just put that on the flip chart and we'll come back to that later on. I did a lecture this morning at Edith Cowan University where I put a lot of things on the parking lot, delivered some content, went back, and there was 2 or 3 things that I hadn't ticked off during my presentation and I was able to cover them off the parking lot. So the whiteboard and lectern enables you to use the platform even more effectively. So that's my call to action. Lots of workshops coming up. Hey guys, if you know anyone, I've got a workshop in Adelaide on the 21st of October. Any contacts that you could share the information with? We haven't tried Adelaide before. One of the things and I work all around Victoria, all around Queensland, all around WA, one of the things with starting new workshops is building the networks. If any of you've got any contacts you could connect me with in Adelaide, South Australia, that would be much appreciated. Lots of workshops coming up in Perth if anyone's interested. And next webinar, 15th of September, how to organise a presentation. But for today, try and get out from behind the lectern. And Sharon, you're speaking in November, so you've got plenty of time. Can I recommend books on NLP? Let me think about that. And because NLP is such a big science in its own right. If you Google John Grinder, G-R-I-N-D-R, John Grinder has written a lot of books, but NLP for presenters, there may be some workbooks on that. I have got one NLP textbook that I may be able to recommend for you, Sharon. So let me get back to you on that.